This is the case of Terrance. Terrance always experienced difficulty with reading, even though he was not identified as having a learning disability until 6th grade. His overall ability indicated an IQ score of 74, with low average verbal skills and below average performance skills. However, these scores were viewed as low estimates of his abilities. Terrance lived with his mother and a 23-year-old sister. By high school, Terrance was placed in self-contained special education classroom because of his weak academic skills and his tendency to speak loudly and become angry when confronted with compliance by adult authority figures. In 9th grade, a functional behavioral assessment was conducted and a behavioral intervention plan was implemented with some success. Terrance began to experience behavioral difficulties during the 2nd semester of 9th grade. Verbal altercations with a teacher resulted in his being suspended for 5 days. Terrance still made average grades in all classes and earned credit toward graduation. In 10th grade, a disciplinary incident occurred that would alter his education. Terrance was suspended from school for 10 days, with the possibility of expulsion. In an IEP meeting, it was determined that Terrance would be placed in an interim alternative educational setting, IAES, for 45 school days. Let's watch what occurred.
Our consensus is that Terrance was receiving an appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. In fact, Terrance has been relatively successful since the behavioral intervention plan was put into effect. We now need to address 2 questions to determine if Terrance's behavior was a manifestation of his disability. Was his conduct, that is, having drugs at school, caused by, or did it have a direct and substantial relationship to his disability?
Terrance has a learning disability that affects his ability to read. He also lacks self-control when faced with pressure or an authority figure. These behaviors have been carefully documented and addressed in his IEP. I don't know what else we could do to help Terrance. He has never displayed any behaviors that would indicate he was involved with drugs. I just don't understand why he brought drugs to school. He knows that this is illegal and against school policy. I don't think there is any relationship between his disability and the behavior of bringing drugs to school.
I am so unhappy with Terrance's behavior. You all were doing what you could do to help him, and now he does this? I can't feel sorry for him, and I just don't know what to do with him.
It appears that we are all in agreement that Terrance's behavior of bringing drugs to school was not related to his disability. Now, was his behavior the direct result of the school's failure to implement his IEP?
Absolutely not. All services that Terrance needed were carefully documented in his IEP, and he received every service.
I completely agree. Everyone who worked with Terrance was aware of what he needed, and he received all services in his IEP.
Then we are in agreement that the school implemented his IEP. Therefore, Terrance's behavior is not a manifestation of his disability. As we previously discussed, Terrance will be placed in an interim alternative educational setting for 45 days, where he will receive the services outlined in his IEP. During the next few weeks, the school district will hold an expulsion hearing. If he is expelled, he will not return to the high school. If he is not expelled, he will return to his current placement on the 46th day after beginning the interim alternative educational setting. The discussion held today will be presented at the expulsion hearing.
The meeting concluded and Terrance began receiving special education services daily for 2 hours a day at his home. An expulsion hearing was held and it was recommended to the Board of Education that Terrance be expelled for bringing drugs to school. The Board of Education decided to expel Terrance for the next school year. In addition, an IEP meeting was held to determine what services Terrance would require to continue to work toward his IEP goals. Ultimately, Terrance was placed in a private day treatment facility where his learning disability and behavior problems could be addressed.